Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we're talking about hammers. That's right. We're going to our mind map to get our bearings straight. And over the weekend, we were gone for a long time here on the show. I was in Austin, Texas, learning some knowledge on myself. And it was an amazing time, but there was a lot of activity. Like Elon took over Twitter, Nancy Pelosi, her husband got attacked by a hammer randomly a couple days before an election. We got a lot to get into, and you can see we are going to start off with this. Pelosi and his Depape charges coming out, criminal charges against this guy, David Depape, and he is an interesting fellow, apparently a nudist. Some were saying that he's a MAGA extremist, an insurrectionary type of person, a Republican person, but it turns out maybe that's not really all that true. We see the FBI showed up at his house, and look at that. It's like I think that's a pride flag with a marijuana leaf on there. There's BLM flags all over the place. Very strange activity, but the San Francisco Police Department, they came out. They gave us an update. We'll check in on that. We have some questions about this hammer. Where'd this hammer come from? It's hammer time. Yeah, on Rumble, Dog Digger says, it's hammer time, baby. You can't touch this. And so we're going to check in with the SFPD on that. Apparently, they knew him pretty well. They asked if he was that nudist guy that was, poking around there in the area. The actual criminal complaint got filed. FBI special agent drafted this. 2 criminal charges. We'll take a look at both of those before we check back in over on the Mika and Joe Brezinski show. Mika was out, and she sort of runs that place now. She's sort of in charge of things. And she said, this is all Trump's fault. Everything that's wrong. In fact, that guy who cut her off on the way home when Joe was driving her back home, he very upset about it. It's all Trump's fault, TDS to the maximum level. So we'll check in with her before we check in with a neighbor, somebody who actually knows this individual and who sort of tried to keep her distance from him because she tells a little bit of a different story. So we've got a lot to unpack there about Pelosi and his Depape, who was over at his residence. We'll see how that unfolds. Before we talk about this really serious story, this is kind of a big deal. The Department of Homeland Security, they're this big, disgusting bureaucracy that steals our liberties from us. Nested within that, they have what's called CISA, another disgusting bureaucracy which enables further theft of our liberties. And they are constantly trying to come up with new schemes and new little, grifts on how they can just sort of gobble up all of our rights. And some minute entries actually leaked that we're going to take a look at. A lot of material to go through there. Minute entries that go all the way back through this year. Okay, so not like 2-3 years ago. This year, 2022, we'll look at them. And there's also emails that originate all the way back to 2020, which is where these bureaucrats are sending emails over to Facebook, okay, over to @fb.com. Hey, we're going to censor all this information @fb.com for Facebook. Jim Jordan is recognizing that all this stuff has been weaponized, of course, and so we've got a clip from him to round out the second segment. In our third segment, we're going to check in on SCOTUS. There were oral arguments today, the Supreme Court, and we heard from one of the newest judge, Ketanji Brown Jackson. She was sort of really involved in the oral arguments today. The U.S. Solicitor General made the argument and said, hey, this is why we need affirmative action. This is why we sort of kind of, yes, it is kind of discriminatory in a sense, but we need it in order to balance the discrimination that has already been existing thanks to the male patriarchy, Trump, whatever. Okay. So she is making oral arguments. We'll check in with her. Ketanji came out and she's making the argument. She's saying, well, how is a boost a harm? If we give somebody like a step up, is that really harmful under the Constitution? We'll check in with Judge Alito. He's asking about the check boxes. He says, why do we need all these check boxes? Check this if you're African American or if you're Asian. And how do we sort of reconcile that with all of the various permutations of all the different potential check boxes? And are they too overbroad and therefore unconstitutional? We'll check out that argument. And then Ketanji sort of was taking another argument saying, well, what if we are not allowed to talk about race? What if we can't talk about race at all? Isn't that discrimination? So your head's spinning. I know it's complicated. We'll see how this all works. But everything is discriminatory, discrimination everywhere you look. And we'll unpack that because that was what was taking place outside of the Supreme Court today. And so, as you can see, my friends, we have some heavy lifting to get to. We're going to talk about some criminal charges. We've got some minute entries from our disgusting federal government, and then we'll check in with the Supreme Court. But if you want to be a part of the show and get access to those morning walk-in talks where we carry on the conversation after the show ends here, and you want to participate in the after party, which happens as soon as this show's over, we stop here on YouTube and the other platforms, go back to our private locals platform. You can join us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And it's a great way to support the show. Also, you can hit that YouTube membership button and join there. Hit that subscribe button, which isn't red anymore. I'm going to have to update that screenshot. That's not what it looks like. There was a major update, as you probably saw. But I am, of course, always very appreciative of your help. Your referrals to our law firm, the R&R Law Group, is where we help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their criminal cases, which is what we help with, but also beyond that in their lives. And so if you know anybody who's been charged with a crime in the state of Arizona, that's what we do. An amazing team, attorneys and others helping every day to help people get back on path. 480-787-0394, online at rrlawaz.com. And I'm grateful for your support over there. All right. And so let's cue this puppy up so we can get right into the meat and potatoes on the day because we've got a lot to get to. And we're starting with Paul. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, her husband, Paul Pelosi, who we've talked about here before on this channel, previously charged with the DUI, got that whole thing buttoned up, apparently has been assaulted. He was attacked in his home, according to multiple police reports and to an FBI report that just came out, which we will take a look at. A FBI special agent drafted a criminal complaint. It hit the court dockets. They're alleging that this individual, David Depape or Depape or Depape, many different pronunciations out there, but we're calling it Pelosi's Depape, so we all know who it is. Pelosi's Depape was charged with several crimes, and we'll check in first from the announcement that came out from the San Francisco Police Department. This is the chief of police, and I don't see his name. San Francisco chief of police reporting on the attack against Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi. Apparently, while he was home late at night, an individual broke in with a hammer, and it all went downhill from there.
At approximately 2:27 this morning, San Francisco police officers were dispatched to the residence of Speaker Nancy Pelosi regarding an A-priority well-being check. When the officers arrived on scene, they encountered an adult male and Mr. Pelosi's husband, Paul. Our officers observed Mr. Pelosi and the suspect both holding a hammer.
Two hands.
The suspect pulled the hammer away from Mr. Pelosi and violently assaulted him with it.
Whack.
Our officers immediately tackled the suspect, disarmed him, took him into custody, requested emergency backup, and rendered medical aid. The suspect has been identified as 42-year-old David Depape.
David Depape, identified by the San Francisco Police Department as the individual who attacked Paul Pelosi, saying that he went in there with a hammer and that they were both sitting there with their hands on the hammer until police showed up. Door opened. We're going to have a lot of questions about that. Where'd the hammer come from? Was it Paul's hammer? Is it David's hammer? Is it a household hammer? Was there a third party there? Who opened the door? Who called the police? A lot of questions. But we get a little bit of information from the San Francisco Police Department. And the media had a lot more questions on top of that. They talked to this guy. San Francisco Sergeant Laufengerger is responding to a question about the attack on Paul Pelosi. Hey, whose hammer was that? They say that Paul was attacked with a weapon, the weapon being a hammer. We often ask who the gun belonged to or who the knife belongs to. But where about this hammer? Where did this hammer come from?
We can confirm that there was one hammer involved. There was an altercation, and Mr. Pelosi and Mr. Depape were struggling for control of the hammer.
Okay.
Was it inside the residence? Inside the residence?
I can't go into that.
Do you know whose hammer it was?
I don't know whose hammer it was.
Whose hammer was it? Did Depape bring it in with him, or was that Paul's hammer? And why was Paul out with a hammer? Why was a hammer just hanging around. Maybe he was hanging some paintings up. Don't know. But a very interesting story, and we have a lot of questions about it. Now, as the media was scrambling to blame this on all of the MAGA Republican insurrectionists, extremists, ultra megas, the media was working overtime to try to cover over the actual truth on this. This clip is from the media reacting to the attack on Paul Pelosi. You hear a journalist in the background saying, "Can we talk about the fact that we know this guy is the Nudist Guy, or should we just leave all of that out?"
Okay, so is this the dude that was a former, nudist dude?
The nudist dude.
Yeah, okay. Is it okay to say any of that stuff?
Can we talk about it?
No?
No?
Yeah, all right, cool. All right, so, but we kind of
Okay.
have working knowledge of who this guy may be. Hang on one second. Let me go see what they've got over here. I'll call you back. Bye.
Can we talk about the fact that that guy was the nudist colony guy? Oh, we can't? Okay, but we do know who he is, right? Okay, I guess we'll just call him. What would you like me to call him instead of nudist? Oh, MAGA extremist. Oh, perfect. Yeah, we can probably do that because it's perfect for us. We needed an October surprise. Everything looks like it's going off the rails for us. We thought that this Dobbs decision was going to give us the oomph that we needed to close out this election, but that hasn't happened. And so we really, really needed something like a hammer attack on the skull of Nancy Pelosi's husband. Perfect. That'll do. So go with that rather than the nudist 2 a.m. late night romp story. Don't go there at all. Leave that all out of it. And so you can see why that raises some eyebrows for some people. Now, over at this individual's residence, I want to show you what happens when the feds show up. Because, listen, we just heard two different clips from two different San Francisco police officers. A local San Francisco police guy, he's there. He seems very competent. He can do investigations. There are all sorts of home invasions in San Francisco. Happens all the time, right? All the time. It's San Francisco. People just take carts out of Walmart. Just, it's mine now. It's what are you going to do about it? Nothing. So he's very experienced with this type of criminality. They just let it go on and on and on. This guy is too. Very competent local police officers. And they were there, right? They responded. The FBI wasn't there at all. But guess who showed up? Oh, that's right. The FBI showed up. Why? It's like those scenes out of the movies where, you know, you have John McClane and Sergeant, and they're standing there in Nakatomi Tower, and they're solving this whole thing, and then the feds show up, and they're like, hey, we're going to wreck everything. The feds are here. And it's just taking over the investigation. They don't want the local cops to be involved in this and finish this out. The feds show up. It's our jurisdiction here, and we'll take it over. So they show up, and this is what it looks like when somebody is there outside the residence of David Depape, Pelosi's Depape. You see that there's a crowd forming and there's a flag floating around in the background. Looks like it's got multiple colors, and I'm not an expert at identifying all the various flags, so forgive me if I am mistaking it, but it looks like it might be one of those flags that endorses a lefty cause. Let's take a look at what happens when the FBI shows up. They say, it's our case, it's our jurisdiction. We're going to make sure this whole thing gets handled the way we want it to get handled. Why don't you all step aside?
No, I mean, yeah, so what did you guys want to talk about? Move over to the side. We don't care about anything else, but let's just go over there and talk about it.
Looks like a rainbow flag with a marijuana leaf on there. Interesting front yard.
Daniel, the FBI's here.
Somebody says, hey, the FBI's here.
FBI's here. FBI.
Federal Bureau of Investigation, they're shouting in the background.
I mean, be surprised? I mean, there's a bazillion news reporters knocking on our door. Yeah, so, I mean, they want to come talk to us. So.
Now, we'll speed this up a little bit. You see the FBI now starts to cross into the property. Here is apparently the FBI, according to the author or the poster of this video.
Down there, you should just be able to pull the thing.
This right here?
Yeah. Oh, well, why don't you want to talk
FBI. Now, look at these FBI agents. Plain clothes.
Okay. gate here.
So very interesting property. People coming out of the property. This FBI agent backs up. You're going to see a woman come into frame, and he's like, "What are you doing, lady?" He says, "Can we help you?" She says, "I'm a reporter for so-and-so."
News reporter knocked on her door and said that.
He says, "There's a reporter in your yard. Do you want a reporter in your yard?"
Are you not reporting?
No, just go away, reporters. Reporters, go away. Go.
Reporters go away. The reporter responds, "Are you not reporters? Like, who are you guys? You're here in plain clothes. You look like a bunch of slobs who just got off a bus stop. Why are you here? And why are you interfering with me? I'm a journalist. I can do whatever the hell I want. And so who the hell do you think you're talking to?"
This is the FBI.
That's the FBI.
For real?
Yeah, no joke.
Sorry.
Journo says, oh, didn't know that was the FBI. Hear that is one more time.
Are you not reporting?
No, just go away, reporters. Reporters, go away. Go away.
This is the FBI.
Yeah, go
For
away.
real?
Yeah, no joke.
Sorry.
Oh, for real? Yeah, that's the FBI. Just schlubbing around all over the place. You know, I thought they were supposed to, look like official special agents but
I mean, I don't know.
it's the FBI. So they show up. We're in charge now. We don't know who the FBI agent is who authored the criminal complaint, which we are going to look at next, but it is a female agent, and so it could be one of the two females who showed up with this crew. We don't know. They get invited into the house. Or not. You see the bus that has all sorts of spray paint on it. You see spiders floating around. They go around to the side. Evidently, this individual, David Pelosi's Depape, was living in the garage. And so the conversation continues there. FBI showing up at David Depape's house. And we don't know what happened after that, but we do know that they charged him federally. Federal charges, not local charges, as we predicted some time ago on our walk and talk. Why wouldn't the feds come in here and take over the whole case to make sure that they can handle it within the purview of the FBI? So let's take a look at the actual complaint. We have it pulled up here. David Depape, who allegedly attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, criminally charged now with 2 counts under 18 U.S. Code sections 115 and 1201, one for assault on the immediate family of a federal official. Federal official being Nancy Pelosi, her husband, attacked. Attempted kidnapping of a federal official as well, all occurring in California, in San Francisco, October 28th, being filed out of the Northern District of California Federal District Court. You see, the FBI agent who signed on this is Agent Stephanie Miner, and we don't know if she was there on scene at the location that we just covered. But this was approved by Laura Vartain, the Assistant U.S. Attorney, all filed on 10/31 out of San Francisco. Honorable Judge Thomas Hickson presiding. Taking a look at the criminal complaint and the warrant, we see that the FBI special agent writes, "I, Stephanie Miner, special agent, do declare as follows. I make this affidavit in support of an application under the Federal Rules of Procedure for a warrant and a criminal arrest complaint filed against David Wayne Depape for the following reasons. 1, I believe that there is probable cause to support a finding that Depape assaulted Paul Pelosi, an immediate family member of the U.S., Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, with the intent to retaliate against her. And also violation of 18 U.S. Code by attempting to seize and kidnap an official as well. I'm setting out more detail below, but the facts and the investigation lead me to believe that Depape was prepared to detain and injure Pelosi when he entered the residence." And she says Speaker Pelosi here. They say that Depape had zip ties, tape, rope, and at least one hammer with him that morning. Evidence further shows that Depape assaulted Mr. Pelosi with Depape's own hammer. There we go. So we didn't know whose hammer it was, but the special agent says it was Depape's hammer. She continues. She says, I submit this affidavit for the limited purpose of securing a criminal complaint and an arrest warrant. I believe there's probable cause. I've done this and written this based on my experience. I've got a lot of it as a federal officer, and they form the basis of my opinions. She says, I am a special agent with the FBI. I've been there since 2019. I work in San Francisco. I investigate people who commit violent crimes. I participated in a lot of things, including a 21-week new agent training. Wow, long time. And I have assisted with a lot of different things. I'm an investigator and I'm a great FBI agent, blah, blah, blah. Now, she details for us the U.S. code that is applicable here, 18 U.S. code, the two different sections. You see the criminal charges are sort of detailed here as follows. We've got the first section, whoever assaults, kidnaps, or murders, or attempts or conspires to kidnap is guilty of the law, violating the law. And the other one, whoever unlawfully seizes, confines, intermingles. Kidnapping charges are so broad that essentially, if you even limit a person's mobility, like if you stop a person from being free to leave, that prevention of their physical movement, right? Many prosecutors would argue that alone is enough for kidnapping. So even though, he never put him in the back of a trunk and hauled him off the premises, just the fact that he was sort of there and limiting his ability to do things is going to support the probable cause finding, is according to most FBI agents, or prosecutors, I should say. Facts supporting probable cause, she continues, she says, on October 28th at 2:23 a.m., San Francisco dispatch got a 911 call from Paul Pelosi. He was located at his residence in San Francisco, California. Pelosi stated words to the effect of, which is very interesting. Why didn't she just say what he said? Words to the effect of, there is a male in the home and that male is going to wait for Pelosi's wife. Pelosi further conveyed that he does not know who the male is. The male said his name is David. Okay, so that's at 2:23 a.m. We have 8 minutes later at 2:31. San Francisco police officer Colby Wilms responds to the resident. So we've got a short time, 8 minutes later, they're there. Colby shows up, knocks on the front door. When the door was opened, by whom? Pelosi and Depape were both holding the hammer with one hand, and Depape had the other hand holding onto Pelosi's forearm. So maybe Pelosi's got two hands on it, and Depape's got a third hand on it, and then Depape's hand is also going on Pelosi's arm. Okay, so we've got like a three thing going on, two hands on the hammer. Pelosi greeted the officers. Oh, good evening, gentlemen. The officers asked them what's going on. The heck is this weird situation? Depape responded. He says, everything's good. Officers then asked Pelosi and Depape to drop the hammer. Okay, interesting sequence there. Hello, officer. You guys good? Yeah, everything's good. Okay, can you drop the hammer? Depape then pulled the hammer from Pelosi's hand and swung the hammer, striking Pelosi in the head. Okay, now that's not good at all, right? That is not a good thing. Striking an 80-something-year-old man in the head is not good. I do not condone that or endorse that in any way. And I hope he recovers completely. Officers immediately went inside and were able to restrain Depape. Okay. Now, while they were restraining Depape, Pelosi appeared unconscious on the ground. Officers removed a cell phone, cash, clipper cards, and an unidentified card from Depape's right short pocket. Depape provided officers his first and last name. After officers asked Depape if he had an ID on him, he said it might be in his backpack on the back porch, but later stated his backpack was near the broken glass of the window. When officers removed Depape from Pelosi's residence, police body-worn camera footage showed a glass door that appeared to be laminated glass broken near the door handle. Laminated glass meaning that it doesn't, explode and shatter. Well, it shatters, but it doesn't explode outside the frame. It's sort of contained. So, newer residents, you don't have broken glass shattered all over the place. It sort of is self-contained, like your car windshield. San Francisco Police Department recovered zip ties in Pelosi's bedroom and in the hallway near the front door of the Pelosi residence. Front door. And in the hallway near the front door. So, yeah, I'd love to see a layout of this property and where did he come in? Because there was backpack on the back porch. So you see here, there's a back porch and a front door. So he entered through the back porch, went to the front of the this is a giant residence, right? It's a giant mansion. And apparently he's dropping zip ties as he's sort of meandering around, probably looking for the podium and Nancy Pelosi. In addition, law enforcement searched Depape's backpack at the Pelosi residence, and they found, among other things, a roll of tape, white rope, one hammer, one pair of rubber and cloth gloves, and a journal. We have witness statements now from the San Francisco Police Department. Colby, who had this case ripped away from him by the FBI, I'm sure Colby's very competent, probably was thrilled to investigate this until those feds came in. They're like, it's our jurisdiction. But Wilms was able to interview a witness, witness one, don't know who that person is, who saw an individual in all black carrying a large black bag on his back, walking near the Pelosi residence where witness one was parked. Oh, witness one was working private security at an address nearby. Witness one then heard what sounded like banging on either door or car, and then heard the sirens within a minute or two. Oh, private security officer. I wonder if Nancy Pelosi had any private security there. You know, because she's the Speaker of the House. Pelosi was interviewed by Officer Arian Starks in the ambulance during the transport to the hospital. Pelosi says, I've never seen Depape before. Pelosi said, I was asleep when he came into my bedroom and he stated that he wanted to talk to Nancy. Which is a scary thing, right? That sounds horrible. I understand that when Depape refers to Nancy, he means Nancy Pelosi, Paul Pelosi's wife, is what he's clarifying for us. Thank you. When Pelosi told him that Nancy was not there, Depape stated that he would sit and wait. Pelosi stated that his wife would not be home for several days, and Depape reiterated, I'll just hang tight. This is a big place. There's plenty of room out there for me. Pelosi then, interestingly, was able to go into the bathroom, which he was then able to call 911. He stated that when the officers arrived, that was when Depape struck him with a hammer. In a subsequent interview with law enforcement officers on October 30th, Paul stated that Depape had a hammer with him during the events. And further, the hammer, the attempted murder weapon, did not belong to the Pelosi family. Depape's interview then. So the San Francisco police, who are no longer in charge of this case because it's been commandeered by the FBI, they sat down Depape. It was a Mirandized interview. It was recorded. And I wonder if we'll ever hear that. Here's what it sounds like in summation. The FBI special agent says that Depape stated that he was going to hold Nancy hostage and talk to her. If Nancy were to tell Depape, quote, the truth, he would let her go. But if she lied, he was going to break her kneecaps. Depape was certain that Nancy would not have told the truth, and thus broken kneecaps. In the course of the interview, Depape articulated that he viewed Nancy as the leader of the pack of lies told by the Democratic Party. Which is accurate. I mean, she is the leader. She's the leader of the House. It's true. Depape also explained that by breaking Nancy's kneecaps, which we do not endorse here, she would then have to be wheeled into Congress, which is, don't endorse that, which would show other members of Congress that there are consequences to their actions. Depape also explained generally that he wanted to use Nancy to lure another individual to Depape, which I don't know who that might be. But he continues, he says, special agent writes, Depape stated that he broke into the house through a glass door, which was a difficult task that required the use of a hammer, which is why he brought the hammer, I guess, in the first place. Maybe the hammer wasn't a murder weapon, it was just a glass breaking device that he needed to use. Depape stated that Pelosi was in bed, appeared surprised by him. Depape told Pelosi, "Wake up!" And Depape told Pelosi, "I'm looking for Nancy." Paul then responded, "She's not here. Who are you?" Pelosi asked how they could resolve this situation. "Okay, Nancy's not here, but is there anything I can do to help you? And what do you want here?" Depape stated that he wanted to tie Pelosi up so that Depape could go to sleep, because he said, "Man, I'm tired. I've been carrying this backpack to your house." For carrying the backpack all the way to the Pelosi residence. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I got a hammer in here. I got gloves in here. Rubber gloves and cloth gloves, by the way, along with zip ties." And so maybe that explains the zip ties that were dropped off by the front door. When he came in the back door, he went to the front door and started emptying out the backpack because it was so heavy. So he's like, "Will you just shut up, Paul? Go back to sleep. I'm going to tie you up. I'm exhausted. I've been carrying this thing. It's like, 5 pounds. It's killing my back." Around this time, according to Depape started taking out twist ties from his pocket so that he could restrain Pelosi. Twist ties or zip ties? Because those are different. Twist ties are those things you put around your loaf of bread, aren't they? Zip ties might be a little bit different. If they're actual twist ties, I'm not sure he's going to get too far with that, because they say twist ties. They don't say zip ties. Pelosi moved towards another part of the house, but Depape stopped him, and together they went back into the bedroom. While taking and talking with each other, Pelosi went into a bathroom where Pelosi grabbed a phone call to call 911. Depape stated he felt like Pelosi's actions compelled him to respond. Depape remembered thinking that there's no way that the police are going to forget about this phone call. Depape explained that he did not leave after the 911 call because, much like the American founding fathers with the British, he was fighting against tyranny without the option of surrender. Depape reiterated his sentiment elsewhere in the interview. George Washington, founding fathers, and Thomas Jefferson, Tree of Liberty, blah, 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 right? MAGA insurrectionary speech. Paragraph E, the special agent continues. She says, Depape stated that they went downstairs to the front door. The police arrived and knocked on the door, and Pelosi ran over and opened it. Oh, so there's that little factual change. We were waiting for the third party to open the door. Who opened the door? Politico and others reported that the door was opened, and it wasn't by Pelosi and it wasn't by Depape. So who was it? Well, according to this FBI special agent, Pelosi opened it. Pelosi grabbed onto Depape's hammer, which was in Depape's hand, which is very curious. I mean, if the cops are there and he went over to the door and opened it, and this was a home invader, wouldn't Paul Pelosi step outside of when he step out, he opens the door, cops are there. Wouldn't you go outside the door and say, "There's a friggin' maniac in my house with a hammer"? What are you doing? This is ridiculous. Go get him. But he says, "Greetings, officer." They say, "What's going on here?" And he says, "We're good." And then Paul grabs the hammer to launch this fight. It's weird. At this point in the interview, Depape repeated that Depape did not plan to surrender and that he would go through Pelosi. Depape then stated that he pulled the hammer away from Pelosi and swung the hammer toward Pelosi. Depape explained that Pelosi's action resulted in Pelosi, quote, taking the punishment instead. Special agent continues, she says in paragraph 16, that there were items found at Depape's residence. We saw previously the FBI showed up there and they went and they meandered around and they told that journalist, "Get out of here." But on October 29th, law enforcement went to Depape's residence. They determined that he lived in the garage of a residence on Shasta Street in Richmond. They interviewed the owner of the premises, who confirmed that Depape had resided in the garage for approximately 2 years. On the 29th of October, law enforcement searched the garage at Shasta Street pursuant to a search warrant. Among other things, agents seized 2 hammers, a sword, and a pair of rubber and cloth gloves. The agents also found evidence that Depape lived in the garage, including DMV paperwork, IRS letters, and PayPal credit cards. FBI agent Stephanie Miner says, based on the information above, there is probable cause to believe that David Depape intentionally assaulted Paul and attempted to kidnap Nancy Pelosi. Therefore, I request a criminal complaint and an arrest warrant be issued. And the judge, of course, signed off on that. Honorable Thomas X. S. Hickson, United States Magistrate Judge out of the Northern District of California, all summarizing the FBI's take on the attack alleged on Paul Pelosi. And just like anybody in this country, David Wayne Depape deserves the presumption of innocence just like everybody else. We'll see if he gets it now that the FBI is swept in to take charge on this thing. But the media is having a field day over this. They are just latching onto this. What could possibly be more convenient than an attack on the skull of the speaker's husband just a short week before the election starts? On the Mika and Joe Brezinski show, they blame the whole Paul Pelosi attack on Donald Trump. And Mika is saying it's his fault that everything that is wrong in this country is continuing to deteriorate.
And welcome to Morning Joe. It is Monday, October 31st.
Where is
Paul
Joe?
Pelosi, the husband of the Speaker of the House, the woman who was second in line to the presidency, was savagely attacked on Friday. And while surgeons were operating on the fractured skull of the 82-year-old grandfather, deranged right-wing fanatics, Trump media allies, and some of the most powerful people in the world were feverishly trying to stir up conspiracy theories that distracted from the central political headline of this story.
What?
That years of Republican propaganda and Trump-fueled fascism led 42-year-old David Depape to break into Nancy Pelosi's San Francisco home.
Years of Trump propaganda, years of MAGA insurrectionary language, she said, was the main headline that dictates and details exactly what happened in this case. All those years of MAGA Republicans drove Dave Depape to go do this,
seemingly with the intent to harm her. Today, he'll likely be charged with the attempted murder of the speaker's husband, who was in the home when Depape allegedly invaded it. San Francisco police say he smashed his way in.
He wasn't charged with attempted murder, was he? He was only charged with attempted kidnapping and an assault on a family member of an elected official. Not attempted murder. It was a hammer.
And a man on a mission and confronted Paul Pelosi, but looking for Nancy. According to the AP, citing a person familiar with the situation, Pelosi told the intruder that he had to use the restroom. He was engaging with him, trying to hold him off. And in the restroom, that's where Paul Pelosi's phone was charging. And that's when he dialed up 911.
And then when the cops showed up, he walked back into the residence and had a conversation with David, more specifically, said, let me take that hammer back from you now. And then that's when he got attacked. And the cops were standing there like, what is going on, before they realized maybe they needed to do something. So you've got Mika and Joe Brezinski, very lovely couple there on whatever network they're on. And Mika sort of runs things, and she says that it's all Donald Trump's fault. Any opportunity that they can use to connect anything that's bad to their political enemies, they'll do it, even when there's no evidence to support that at all. In fact, there's evidence to support the opposite. We already saw that the attacker allegedly on Paul Pelosi was living in a very interesting location where there were vans that had flags that looked like rainbow flags. And we've seen other support from this individual, David Depape, joining nudist colonies and protesting and standing up for BLM and all sorts of different things. But the media has called him a MAGA insurrectionist. This is David Depape's neighbor, who actually knows a little bit more about him, lives nearby, says this guy is totally bonkers. And if anything, he's a lefty, not an extremist MAGA Republican.
Our vehicle was out of commission. I was walking past, and Gypsy's son was with a small little girl, and he was on the bus. And the little girl and Gypsy's son were walking away from the bus, and the guy remained on the bus. And that's when I recognized his face. That's the only time I ever saw his.
That's David.
Was
she's
within,
talking
like,
about
the last month or so. or a couple weeks.
Do you know how long he stayed during that a couple months ago?
No, we try to just avoid them at all costs.
Okay.
Because they're unwell.
They, bother us.
Okay, but so the last time you saw him was a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
and he was here for a few days.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything strange about him or anything that stood out?
There's something strange about the whole household.
Everybody's
the
weird.
entire household is very, very strange.
How about him?
He is birds of a feather with akin to them. So they are just, nudist drug abusers, and that's who gravitates toward them.
And the children who live there, they seem to be underage or under 18.
I'm not sure how old they are.
Okay.
And Trisha, again, what do you say their politics are?
Politics.
I'm not sure. I would imagine that they're more left-leaning because of their support for the gay community and for for other people. But it is now I'm not sure what way they lean because
they have the flag.
Because of you. Now I'm not sure what way they lean because everybody in the media has been telling me this is a MAGA racist extremist Republican, but I'm the neighbor. I live right next to them. There's flags all over the place. Looks like the people they support, their activities with the gay community. I would think that they're lefty, but now based on you people telling me differently, I'm not so sure about that.
for other people, but it is now I'm not sure what way they lean because
they have the flag, the LGBT flag with the
pot. Yeah.
So.
But any signs of anti-Semitism?
They are completely unhinged, so I wouldn't.
Completely unhinged.
Yeah.
They nothing that they believe in aligns with their actions. So they'll say that they are, pro Black lives, and then they'll call the police on Black people, and so they don't stand by their actions. Don't stand by their words.
So some paranoid behavior, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Paranoid.
And almost some psychotic behavior too.
Yes.
Okay.
Was that also demonstrated when David was the president, or was that times when?
Yeah, it's never changed how.
Yeah, psychotic,
acted.
unwell
David acted
behavior.
the same way?
From what I saw of him, he's never approached me or my partner at all.
The mainstream media calling this MAGA insurrection 2.0. Nancy Pelosi couldn't keep control of the United States Congress House, apparently can't control her own house either, allowing insurrections to take place everywhere we turn. The media turning it into insurrection. They're turning these things into political hit jobs, and they're not at all. They are unwell people, in this case particularly, who apparently was in Nancy Pelosi's house, even by the media, or even if you give this story every benefit of the doubt and say everything that FBI agent said is true, what we're hearing from the neighbors and others is this person is just a sick, unwell person. The disgusting tendency of Mika and Joe Brezinski and others on the media to categorize this as a MAGA attack is disgusting, but they do it because it's election season. Now, this would be an interesting case to defend. I mentioned this on a prior walk and talk, but I don't know how this person is, right? David Depape. If there is any hint at invitation, if there's any additional facts, and this guy is willing to talk about those things, that could really change the dynamic of the prosecution, right? If he's not well, if he's incompetent, then it's hard to prosecute him because we have competency requirements in this country. You can't prosecute insane people because it's not due process, right? They are unwell. You can't criminally prosecute somebody who is not knowing what the heck is going on. We try to rehabilitate those people. But if he's not, insane, if he's not unwell, if he is restorable, and he has something additional to add to this, this could really complicate things for the U.S. prosecutors if there is another angle to this story. If there is not another angle to this story, well, then we should see everything, should see a very cut and dry prosecution, probably see a big fat plea deal with a big heavy penalty, and we'll see if this guy takes it. But until then, we, of course, will continue to cover it. Pelosi and Depape, criminal charges taking place out of the Northern District of California, the feds coming in to sweep up the entire investigation so that the FBI can handle it. Meanwhile, we'll ride along. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, and we have another segment now that we need to dive into. This is a pretty big story here. And we're going to go through this. We've got a little heavy lifting and some reading to do, but this is important. Obviously, we've got elections coming up and we're looking backwards. Leaked minutes from the Department of Homeland Security and CISA are now available. We're going to take a look at these because the U.S. government is looking like they are organizing themselves to suppress free speech in America. We've covered this a lot. These minute entries were just made available over from The Intercept, and we're going to go through them going all the way back to 2020, where we can see conversations between government bureaucrats and big tech like Facebook. We're also going to check in with Representative Jim Jordan, who's responding to this, saying that the Biden administration and the government intelligence agencies are weaponizing these agencies against Americans. But I want to start with some hysteria from CNN. As the elections near, CNN is warning us once again that if you exercise free speech, if you question one of the things that happens in America, which is elections, one of the key tools of American democracy, of course, is elections. We're not at the end of history. We still can ask ourselves whether one of our tools is sharp enough as we're using them in elections. But are our elections 100% secure and appropriate? Well, the Department of Homeland Security seems to think so, and they're warning that anybody who questions otherwise might be contributing to political violence across America. Here is the meltdown from CNN.
What are you hearing?
Well, John, this is a joint intelligence bulletin being put out by Department of Homeland Security, FBI, National Counterterrorism Center, and U.S. Capitol Police. And they're saying that these domestic violent extremists do pose a risk in the period before, leading up to, and after the midterm elections. So crucially, that's a period we're in right now. And these threats of violence will extend, this bulletin says, even beyond Election Day on November 8th. So what this bulletin is saying, that these threats of violence could incorporate elected officials, election workers, even candidates. And they're saying what's spurring all of these threats are the perceptions still that the 2020 election was rigged or stolen, and then enduring perceptions of those false election fraud claims, as well as what they say are new or emerging perceptions of fraud undermining the integrity of these elections coming up here.
So it's not just the prior elections, it's also these upcoming elections. And so you can't talk about those. And you also can't talk about the upcoming elections either, because it's just, I guess it's too dangerous to question these things. It might lead to violence. And you can see the chyron there at the bottom. DHS Bulletin, domestic violent extremists pose heightened threat to the midterm elections. Isn't that interesting? And we've been covering this all year. We're getting close to the election. And so they have to really hit that climax, hit that high note, that crescendo as we get near the election. They talked about this earlier in the year, DHS forming these entities along with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI to really focus on domestic homegrown violent extremism. Okay, got it. They're all panicked about it, and it all emanates from questioning elections. If you do that, that's a problem. Now, we're not doing that here at all. We're just asking ourselves if it's okay to talk about elections. We're not asking whether an election outcome was true or not, but can we talk about this stuff? Can we talk about the difference between voter integrity and voter enfranchisement, okay, which are two different concepts? We want as many people to vote as we possibly can, right? This is America, but we got to have some integrity around that enfranchisement, meaning it's citizens and it's people who have an interest in the American tradition, right? It's meaning we have some enfranchisement with some integrity, but they fight over this stuff. They say that if you ask for integrity, that's voter suppression. And we have to constantly ask ourselves, what are the appropriate policies? We're allowed to do that, right? We're allowed to talk about this stuff in America. We do have free speech in this country. Doesn't the First Amendment exist for a reason? I thought it did. This report comes out from CISA, the Cybersecurity Advisory Committee, and they give us some bullet points here. They tell us in this cover sheet that the core of this big, disgusting bureaucracy's mission is to safeguard America's critical infrastructure. They say the nation has seen the corrosive effects of what they call MDM. This is mis, dis, and malinformation, which we have a lot of these different categories now. And it's very complicated to keep track of them. So before we look at the meat and potatoes, let's see what else this educates us about. They say this has hit us across a host of different areas And this is going to go into the next election cycle. They give us an update on where they are. They say CISA has a burgeoning, see that word there? MDM effort, which is the mis-dis-mal-information effort, that focuses on building national resilience through public awareness. We engage with subject matter experts. We develop strategies to message the public and to amplify trusted voices. So whose voices do you think they're amplifying? Do you think they're amplifying yours? No. Do you think they're amplifying mine? No. Or anybody who questions their narrative? Absolutely not. They are bubbling up, and YouTube has said this specifically, the authoritative sources. CNN? Oh yeah, trusted voice. Oh yeah, totally. Fox News? Not so much. These actions include directly engaging with social media companies to flag this, okay? CISA directly engaging with social media companies and creating a repository of factual guides and toolkits. So the disgusting government puts their thumb on the necks of these social media companies to tell them what to do. They say that CISA is bringing on staff to address this and to develop long-term strategies. They want to improve the ability to do analytics on narrative intervention. You understand what that means? They want to see how effective they are. Oh, there's a narrative that's popping up. How can we literally shut that up? And we want analytics on that so we can assess how well we're doing. They also say we're also working with our federal partners to mature as a whole of government approach to mitigating the risks and identifying tools that we want to use. Ahead of the midterm elections in 2022, they say, it's going to be critical to evaluate our role. One approach is to recognize our responsibility for securing the election infrastructure and to become a trusted resource so that we can minimize misunderstandings so that the public trusts us a little bit more. Right now, this is the cover sheet. We're going to scroll all the way to the bottom and start historically, back with an early email from 2020. This email comes from CISA, the Department of Homeland Security.gov, from a guy named Brian Scully. You see, it was sent Tuesday, April 21st, 2020 at 2:40 p.m. And he says, this bureaucrat, Brian, from the Department of Homeland Security, he writes, Dear Redacted, I hope this finds you and your family well. The Center for Internet Security, my government bureaucracy, which manages ISAC, the election infrastructure, is developing a portal to facilitate reporting from state and local election officials. Government bureaucrat sends this email. The idea is to establish a centralized portal for reporting disinformation. You might ask yourself, wait a minute, Rob, you skipped over something. Who is this email going to? Reporting disinformation. Okay, so who should be responsible for this? Like, this should go over to what? Like another bureaucracy? Like another FBI agent? Or another U.S. Attorney's Office or something, right? These are government agencies communicating. The idea is to establish a centralized portal for reporting disinformation so that election officials only have one place to go. Okay. And NAS, and they support the use of the portal, and they've asked CISA to establish a meeting with you all. Who are we talking about? You all. Who is that? Oh, here it is. Would you and anyone at Facebook you think is appropriate have time for a call over the next week or two? It's Facebook. They're sending emails to @fb.com, @fb.com. This is Brian Scully, chief bureaucrat for countering foreign influence, sending emails to Facebook telling them we have a centralized reporting portal for you and we want you to use it. Okay. And we want to integrate it with all of your services so that we can just tell you what is misinformation and ban it off of your platforms, which is censoring and eliminating Americans' free speech directly without any due process. It's the government acting to remove people's speech from other platforms. Back in 2020, April 21st. Now, as we fast forward, we can see that there was, in fact, a meeting that apparently took place. Here's what the agenda looked like. 10 minutes, dial in and opening. Takes a long time to get a bunch of bureaucrats on the phone. 30 minutes, they've got threat updates. And look who they have integrated at these meetings. A threat update from the US government, including the FBI. We have a threat update from Twitter, Facebook, and Google. So all of them are communicating back and forth with one another. This comes from Facebook to the Department of Homeland Security and back over to our friend Brian Scully. A draft agenda for the US government industry meeting so that they can work together to censor free speech in America. 40 minutes on deep dive topics where they can talk about election processes like voting by mail, polling places, and they can coordinate about the threat landscape in advance of the conventions and the debates. All the big tech platforms colluding with the US federal government. It's right here. They have an agenda. August 2020. Here's the meeting. Highlights, upcoming watchouts, all moderated. Got it. Hey, Brian and Matt over from Facebook. Here's what we've suggested. Let's hit it. Now, this continues on. Facebook sends another letter. They say, hey, guys, over at the Department of Homeland Security, this is from Facebook, don't know who it is, over to DHS. This was sent August 11, 2020, elections coming up. He says, hey, gents, you know, they're so hip over there, these tech bros. He says, hey, gents at DHS, hope you're doing well. We saw your email about the Clemson researchers. We're taking a look. We're going to come back on that. Appreciate you sharing your advocacy there. In the meantime, we wanted to share awareness for tomorrow at the meeting. And we just wanted to let you know that the industry side will be releasing a statement tomorrow. Would it be possible for the Department of National Intelligence attendees on the call to share more details? All right, so they're coordinating on joint statements with the government. Do you understand? Facebook is sending the disgusting federal government a draft of this. Do you guys approve this before we publish this out to everybody? Can we get your rubber stamp on this? Why didn't the government just write it? We see this, the government responds. Matt responds. He says, thanks, whatever your name is. We're going to share this with our government partners. Is this being offered in part because of the Wall Street Journal reaching out to you? I spoke off the record with the reporter and I reinforced the good work that we're all doing, trying to cover this up. So Facebook gets panicked about this. They go, we are working pretty closely with the US government. And here's what we say, joint industry statement, right? Coming from all of the big tech platforms. They're all trying to cover up themselves. They say, here's some background. Among today's industry government meeting were the following: Google, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Microsoft, Verizon, Pinterest, LinkedIn. CISA was there. FBI was there. DOJ was there. ODNI was there, right? The entire intelligence community was there. They say since 2018, we've been working with you guys to try to solve all this stuff. For the past years, we want to counter information operations across our platform, and we've been tasked with working with the government to stay vigilant on these issues. All right. So this is a panic press release. This is a PR firm got together and said, holy crap. All right. So you're coordinating with the US government to censor Americans' free speech. We better get some cover on this. So go get everybody else. Go get all the other friends who are also violating our liberties and make sure they're on board as well. Get LinkedIn, get Pinterest, get Verizon, get Facebook, get Google, get Reddit, get Twitter, get everybody. They're all there. And they put this out. And they say, hey, do you mind taking a look at this to give us the approval on this? We're feeling a little bit uncomfortable about it. And they send it over. Can you rubber stamp this? And the government responds. He says, why are you even having to publish this? Like, why are you telling them what we're doing? We've been collaborating and you have to protect the integrity of the election. Like, you're giving them a lot of information. Why are you responding to this? So the bureaucrat, Matt, he says, okay, yeah, we'll share it. But is this being offered because the Wall Street Journal, some reporter contacted you? I spoke off the record with them and I said, we're doing good work. So don't worry about it. I'm the government. They're going to bury the story. In other words, this is like, a secret message. Don't worry about them publishing this because I talked to them. I'm from CISA. And he responds, he says, Matt, yeah, thanks for your quick reply and for forwarding this to your partners. On your other question, our desire to make a statement has been in the works, quote, for a while. Like, we've been thinking about doing this. We're not panicked or anything. It just took us some time to coalesce and pull it together. Bottom line, we have wanted to highlight all the good work we've done together. It's unrelated to the story. So we're not panicked. Don't worry about it. Sent back on August. Thanks, he says. I know that the Wall Street Journal reached out for comment, but not sure. right? Just a real short message there on August 11th. Okay, just making sure you're not getting squirrely over there. But then we see another one comes from Facebook, okay? Facebook.com. Somebody at Facebook.com sends a message. Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. Facebook sends a message over to CISA, Department of Homeland Security, Brian Scully, and Matthew Masterson over at Department of Homeland Security. Private entity, Facebook, public company contacting the U.S. government. He says, hey, Brian and Matt, can you please confirm the below is election misinformation? Can you confirm that for us? And he sends a link to a tweet. Thank you. Facebook is checking with their FBI handlers and their CISA handlers, their Homeland Security handlers, on misinformation. We get another email. Now, we lose that. This is where the thread stops. 11/3 is our last email. We fast forward now. We're in the year 2022. The month is February. The date is the 17th. It's 9:41 a.m. earlier this year. We see that an email came out from this woman. Her name is Lauren Protentis. And if you're confused about her gender, well, she's identified them for us with her pronouns. Lauren Portentis would like to be identified as she, her, and we will oblige. Now, she has a title. She's on the MDM team, which is the Mis, Dis, and Malinformation team. She's an election security initiative individual over at the National Risk Management Center. Look at all those words right there. Holy moly. Pronouns, Mis, Dis, Mal, MDM team, election security initiative, National Risk Man. Holy moly. This probably means that she doesn't do anything useful at all because she has all those words, if you can sort of understand where I'm going with that. But let's see what she had to say. So Lauren sends a message now over on February 17, 2022 over to Google. And Allison, she, her, sends this to, copied to Allison. I'm sorry, Lauren sends it to Allison, also a she, her, along with Jeffrey Hale, which is a he, him, which is good. So just don't get confused. And another person who didn't put his or her pronouns or their or its pronouns in the email address, which is a little bit concerning. So we don't know what to do with that one. But Lauren sends a letter to Google, DHS to Google. Says, hi, Google. I hope this email finds you well. The Department of Treasury, DOT, Treasury, has asked our team to appropriate POCs to discuss social media and influence matters. We'd like to make the connection to Google if you're amenable. If there's another POC this should be routed to, please let us know. Thanks in advance. All my best, Lauren Protentis, she, her. If there's another point of contact, right, we'd like to know. We'd like to connect with you so that we can censor as much as possible. Are you the right person to talk to here? Copying the rest of DHS. Now, we get a response. Google responds. They send a letter, an email back at 2:43. It says, hi, Lauren, over from DHS. I didn't appreciate there was an urgency. Sorry for the lag. Oh my goodness. Let's go back on this. Wow, okay. So this is interesting. Now, we didn't see this coming. This email from Lauren is on February 17th at 9:41. Lauren, DHS, sends a letter over to Google. Hey, Google, can you help us with this? She sends a second letter at 10:56, an hour and like 15 minutes later. Says, apologies for the second email, Google. I sent you one an hour ago, but I got to send you another one. This is somewhat time sensitive. So thank you for your prompt attention to this request. Let me know if you have any questions. Can somebody tell me what's so time sensitive about mis, dis, and malinformation? Somebody tweet something illegal that Lauren is freaking out about. She's sitting there on her Gmail just refreshing, over and over and over again. Where's Google? Where's Google? So Google responds like at 2:43 p.m. and she says, hi, Lauren, weirdo. It hasn't even been 24 hours yet. I have a 24-hour email rule. I didn't appreciate that there was an urgency. Sorry for the lag. I'm actually working. Please pass along my contact information. Depending on what the topic is, I may need to pull in others. Thank you. Okay, so whoever this individual is, we don't know, but she works at Google and they get her on the line. She says, okay, I guess if it's urgent. Yeah. And then Lauren, she, her, responds and she says, yeah, sure. I should have mentioned that in my initial note, obviously. Urgent, put something urgent in the subject title. Hello. But she continues. She sends another letter. She says the following to Google, evidently. Actually, this is to Facebook. So we can see this email thread looks. This is a Facebook email thread. Here, it says, hi, Facebook. Thank you for your prompt response to our request. If the Department of Treasury hasn't contacted you yet, they will. They say, relatedly, as the Russia-Ukraine geopolitical tensions escalate, CISA, Cybersecurity Agency, is looking to convene our partners to manage risk. We wanted to gauge interest in whether you want to convene with us, whether you and Meta would like to serve as a facilitator with your industry partners, or if you would prefer that we engage everyone directly. Russia, Ukraine. They have to combat that misinformation in America? And they got to get Facebook on the horn, like immediately? This is February 18th now. The intent of the forum would be to share the current threat landscape and information across the two groups, along with our interagency partners, similar to what we do in the election security space. So if you question the election, illegal insurrection. If you question the upcoming election, illegal insurrection. You can't even talk about it. But now it also carries over to Russia, Ukraine. So CISA is going to get involved in this. Lauren, she, her, says, if of interest and value, we'd work with you to set up an agenda setting call early next week. Feel free to offer times that work for us. We'd like to set up a larger call with your entire office. Let us know if you have any questions. We'd like to collude with you. Many thanks, Lauren. First, we haven't heard from Treasury yet, but we look forward to talking with them. Facebook responds. They say, additionally, we are happy to participate in a forum next week, if helpful, and flag for our industry partners that this is going on. With regard to the forum, they say, we think it's best for CISA, you, to invite other companies to participate. Facebook says, we don't want to go this alone. Okay, we'd rather have safety in numbers. We're too cowardly to tell you to shove off by ourselves, but we will show up if you invite all of our other partners. It's like that. It's, when you see those videos of the crowds raiding, mobbing the stores, they're willing to do that to our rights as long as other people are doing it too. Lastly, we look forward to hearing more from you next week. Let us know if there's anything else you need. Lauren, she, her responds, great. Thanks for the offer to give them notice. Now we get the phone numbers for the meeting. They actually set up the meeting. So all of the Facebook executives are there. And Lauren sends a message to Facebook. She says, hi, for our last call, we somehow ended up with different Zoom links. Can you make sure that you're going to be dialing in from this message? Well, I think it's because they have a Zoom problem, Says, also, I may come back to you separately on sharing our security measures. We have a whole team that works with election officials, and I think you should sync with them. Facebook saying, we're going to even take this to a level you've never even thought. We're going to connect you with the whole election team. And Lauren is sitting there, she, her, by the way, is getting this message from Facebook. And she's going, oh my goodness, they're going to connect us with the whole Facebook election team? Blah, can't even take it. And they can't figure out the Zoom meeting. We're getting, Lauren, typical. We're getting an invalid meeting link message. Are you getting the same? Can you send along an updated link? Idiots. They can't figure it out. Finally, here's another link. All right, use this one. Here, use this one instead. It's right here. We're also going to need to dial in. Oh, gosh. Lauren, get it together. It's a Zoom meeting. You people locked us down in our homes. You can't even figure out Zoom? Crying out loud. Now, you can see that there were evidently some meeting attendees here. Look who's all there. Oh, yeah. University of Washington's there. Twitter's there. CISA's there. Illinois' there. We have the FBI along with JP Morgan Chase is there. Great. Yeah, the bankers need to be there, along with all of the bureaucrats from CISA, Laura Demlow and Allison Snell. Lovely. Now, they give us minute entries from the meeting, and there's some interesting things that we can sort of glean through. These are largely the same in most of these, but I just want to highlight a couple of the details. March 1, this year, 2022, we get a meeting. And there's minute entries tell us that Ms. Demlow opened up the meetings for question, and they're talking about a whole of government approach that can be leveraged, saying that there are inadequate laws to pursue misinformation. And there needs to be something done about this. And you can just see these minute entries just continue. There's another meeting that takes place. This one occurred in April. Purpose of the meeting: to review draft recommendations and begin identifying ways that we can deal with this misinformation. These people are just meeting around. Mr. Hale said, would it be appropriate for CISA to sponsor and fund studies about the effectiveness of our mitigations? Some members agreed to some recommendations. They're trying to detail what CISA can do. They thank the subcommittee for their participation and they carry on. We've got another meeting takes place in May. We have some action items. Let's see here. They're going to refine a list of recommendations for the meetings. These are kind of dry. Let's see if there's any good action items that we can glean. Okay, so as the year progresses, we have another meeting, and this one says they're going to refine the list of recommendations. They're going to contact civil liberty advocates and see what their opinions are, and they're going to make recommendations with the director Easterly. All right, and so let's fast forward through all of these and see if we can get a summary. Wednesday, we have emails back and forth now between the University of Washington.edu. They're sending emails to DHS saying, we're discussing these things, and they're making adjustments to their final recommendations. And let's go check out the latest, most recent meeting before we wrap up this segment and just see what we've got here. We've got some action items coming in from that's the April meeting. Yeah. So you can see they're going to be making recommendations. A lot of this stuff is redacted, names redacted. Reviewed the conversation, and they're going to be reaching out to people. Pretty disgusting behavior that they are just out there drafting recommendations to silence our speech everywhere you turn, but not a surprise. CISA is trying to fight malinformation, which according to their definition is basically anything that doesn't fit the standard narrative. But fortunately, the Republicans may be in charge soon. Representative Jim Jordan says that what CISA is doing by promoting efforts to fight and combat dis, and malinformation is really just the weaponization of federal agencies against America, against Republicans, trying to quash any oppositional narrative, any countervailing opinions that exist.
We went from a secure border to no border. We went from safe streets to record crime. We went from $2 gas to $5 gas. And we went from stable prices to record inflation. And then in addition to doing that to families in our communities and to our country, the Democrats have assaulted our liberties, too, and they've weaponized government to come after you, your First Amendment rights, your Second Amendment rights, and their political opposition. So that's what this election's about. And you can feel the momentum moving in our direction. I mean, I was in 4 states last week, been all over our district, all over the state of Ohio. You can feel it changing because people get it. They know the Democrats are responsible for this mess, and they're going to vote for Republicans. And I think it could be a big night for us on November 8th.
It probably will be. And if the Democrats and the Biden administration in particular continue to try to squeeze, I think what's going to happen is more and more people are going to slip through their fingers as they realize that the government is not looking out for their best interests. And if they can't speak, then really what autonomy do they have to participate in America at all? And as the federal government continues to squeeze, we'll see if more and more people wake up. I certainly hope they do. And we, of course, will continue to cover this. But CISA and the big tech collusion, one of the most, disgusting stories. We'll see if the Republicans do anything about it when they get back in charge, but we'll see. We've got one final segment, my friends. We're going to check in with the Supreme Court and see what they are doing because there were some interesting oral arguments that took place today. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments on affirmative action, an issue that many people haven't really thought about for some time. I really don't remember this issue coming up in a big way since I was in high school and Justice O'Connor was issuing opinions and crafting this some time ago. But it's back up in front of the Supreme Court. We're asking ourselves, is it constitutional to consider race in college admissions? Can you say that this person deserves a boost because of certain factors, certain variables, or not? Well, the U.S. Solicitor, her name is Elizabeth Prelogar, she made a very interesting argument about this today in front of the U.S. Supreme Court In front of the U.S. Supreme Court, Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar made the argument that we need affirmative action so that we can right the inequities. And she pointed to the Supreme Court in particular and said, hey, you guys are pretty much a patriarchal institution.
The second category I would point to is the one I've already referenced, demographics. I think that that can be relevant, again, not to set a quota, not to identify a precise numerical threshold, but in recognition that when there are extreme disparities in representation of certain groups, it can cause people to wonder whether the path to leadership is open. And if I could, maybe I could just give I think a common sense example of that I would hope would resonate with this court. The court is going to hear from 27 advocates in this sitting of the oral argument calendar, and 2 are women, even though women today are 50% or more of law school graduates. Oh. And I think it would be reasonable for a woman to look at that and wonder, is that a path that's open to me, to be a Supreme Court advocate?
Chauvinist.
Are private clients willing to hire women to argue their Supreme Court cases? When there is that kind of gross disparity in representation, it can matter, and it's common sense.
Saying that you, Supreme Court judges, maybe should take a look at your own house, all right? Bunch of bros in here. And, you know, we need to think about correcting this with affirmative action. Maybe we should balance the old playing field, is what she says, and says that the law should allow that to happen in the form of affirmative action. We heard from Ketanji Brown Jackson. Ketanji is the newest addition to the Supreme Court, and she weighs in on the affirmative action debate. She says, hey, how is it harmful to anybody if we just give them a boost? I mean, if everybody is getting the same opportunity and we just kind of nudge people up a little bit and give you a couple extra points here and give you a little bit of benefit here and kind of just nudge you along over this way, does that really hurt everybody else? I mean, you're not holding anybody back. You're just helping somebody go forward. That's equality, right?
Yeah. Justice Jackson? Can I just quickly return to Justice Alito's hypothetical, which I think is a little bit helpful in trying to pinpoint a problem that I've been having. It seems from the race hypothetical that if there was only one basis for giving someone a boost, and that basis was race, then I see disadvantage absolutely to anyone else who's not an underrepresented minority who can get that boost. But I understood.
Okay, so if you only have one variable, if you have 2 people and they're applying to a college or a university and they have equal factors, same GPA, same score, same test score, same extra, but one person has a demographical bonus because of a race, then they go, we give you a boost up. Ketanji said, well, I can understand how that might be a problem because it's giving somebody a boost and it's holding somebody back because we're now distinguishing on the basis of race. And as we talked about on our members only walk and talk this morning, when we talk about race and religion and alienage and national origin, these are protected suspect classes that the Constitution says there's a big history of us sort of infringing on people in these areas. And we don't want to do that. But if we're going to do that with race in the form of college admissions, aren't we sort of making laws about that suspect class? I mean, we're literally saying that you can give people a boost based on their race. Ketanji saying, well, I can see how that is such a close call that might be a problem. But what if it's not that close call? What if it's just one variable out of many?
That we have here a program in which there are at least 40 different bases for being able to get a boost. And not everybody who is an underrepresented minority gets a boost. So it's really hard to figure out if anyone is being disadvantaged in a system like that. And that's why I was worried about standing, because I'm trying to understand how the system is operating to actually advantage minorities in a way that is harmful to anyone else in the system.
Yeah. 40 different variables. It's sort of convoluted. You say, hold on a minute. You can't just talk about race. And they say, perfect. Well, we'll talk about race and everything else. Hair color, eye color, location. Did you walk a little old lady across the street this morning? Yes or no? All of these things. And then the administrators can say, I don't care about all of that other crap. They just go right to the last page. What's the race? Oh, perfect. That's what we're looking for. But the application process, it includes all of these other variables so that it sort of makes it difficult to single out any one variable. And she says, well, if that's the case, then we can't actually show that there was harm caused to the applicants, right?
And I think that attributes to the careful cue that UNC has taken to this court's decisions in Fisher 2, making sure universities find themselves in this Goldilocks problem about considering it too much or too little. The university.
But there are other considerations, is the point. Everyone can get a boost for all sorts of reasons. Minorities don't automatically get a boost under this system, so it's hard to know whether anyone's being disadvantaged from the mere fact that a minority could get a boost in this environment, right?
That's right.
That's right. It is complicated. Other people are getting benefits. We can't ascribe any one benefit solely to a single variable. We've actually created a whole slew of variables, so now it's very hard to tell. And that's kind of by design, right? It's a feature, not a bug.
Evidence also bears it out at Petition Appendix 78, where the evidence showed that hundreds of white students with lower combined GPAs and SAT scores were admitted ahead of higher performing Black students, Latinx students who went to UNC. And I think that bears the hallmark of the type of individualized consideration that this court wanted.
Latinx in the Supreme Court. That's John Roberts saying, okay, thank you, counsel. We're done with your questions there. But Ketanji is asking, is there actual discrimination if it's only a boost and everybody can potentially get a boost? And he says, well, it is hard, but there are situations where there are white students who've actually gotten ahead based on their variables, right? And so you can say maybe like, you might have a race category and a life hardship category in addition to GPA and test scores. So you say, this person has equal GPA, equal test scores. This is a white guy. This is a Black guy. But the Black guy doesn't have a life hardship, let's say, and the other person does, right? The other person, I don't know, survived a tragic accident or whatever it is, right? And they say, wow, that person really had some, he's in a wheelchair or something. Okay, well, we need diversity for wheelchairs. And so the white guy actually got ahead. And so they say, in this case, we have identified a subset of the bigger subset where white people actually were ahead of some Black people who were, or whatever, whatever other demographics they're comparing here, I don't know. But there are instances where they actually got a boost because of other variables. And so they can point to that, and it gives them a nice little escape hatch to make their arguments. Now, Judge Alito is on the right side of the aisle, and Alito is making an argument about a concept called arbitrary and capricious. If you have a law that is so broad that you can impose it, you can interpret it in any way, shape, or form, it's kind of a violation of due process, right? And it's kind of a problem because that means that anybody who is in charge of executing the laws can do whatever the hell they want. The law is so broad that there really is no possibility of enforcing it without it being arbitrary and capricious. And we don't want big general laws that exist that way. We want a functional country. So we have a situation now. Judge Alito, who is a right-leaning judge, asked them about the check boxes. If you've ever applied for anything, there's all these check boxes. And are you this? Are you that? Do you identify in any one of these categories? Alito says, well, what's the point of that? Isn't that sort of arbitrary and capricious? I mean, so what if somebody checks we're Asian? What does that mean? That all Asians are the same? That somebody from China is the same as somebody from Afghanistan? What are you talking about here?
Justice Alito?
I'd like your response to the argument that these racial categories are so broad that any use of them is arbitrary and therefore unconstitutional. So what would you say to, for example, a student whose family came from Afghanistan and doesn't get in because the student doesn't get the plus factor that the student would get if the student's family had come from someplace else? So you would say to the student, well,
yeah, so the Afghanistan student, they're like, well, sorry, you don't fall into this checkbox. I mean, we actually prefer this other type of race. Is that fair?
We don't need you to contribute to a diversity of views at our school because we already have enough Asians. We have a lot of students whose families came from China or other Asian countries. And the student says, well, you don't have anybody like me. I'm from Afghanistan. What similarity does a family background of a person from Afghanistan have with somebody whose family's background is in, let's say, Japan?
So respectfully, what you're describing is the exact opposite of how our process actually works on an individualized basis. We discussed this on page 11 of our brief. There was a Vietnamese student, the admissions officer testified about a Vietnamese student who immigrated to a remote part of North Carolina and thrived in that setting. And she testified undisputed that was a favorable aspect of her application.
That's an individual aspect of the application and something that has to do with her experience. But what is the justification for lumping together students whose families came from China with students whose families came from Afghanistan? What do they have in common?
So I agree that would be a strange rule, and that is not the rule that this court has established.
Well, then why do you have them check a box?
Why the box?
I'm Asian. What do you learn from the mere checking of the box?
So we think that it depends on the individual circumstances of that person. But
so you don't need the boxes at all.
So I think that is not necessarily true on an individualized basis. So another example. So we, again, as I discussed, we attempt very vigorously to recruit and enroll rural students, and we don't ask them to write their essay about how being from a rural background affects their sense of self and their experiences. But what we say is that person comes with something that we value.
Well, they may choose to write about it, but what's the answer to my question? Why do you have these boxes? Why do you give the student the opportunity to say, there's one thing about me, I'm Hispanic?
Because that's what they're looking for, Judge Alito. Hello. They don't care about all that other crap. They don't care about rural this or rural that or whatever life circumstances or essay tell me about this crap. They want the box, baby. They want to flip over to the box and just say, what is it? White guy. God. Worst. All right. Right. That's why. And he's going to tell you, well, no, it's a very multivariate analysis and we can come with all this, blah, 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 blah. But not really. And Judge Alito saying, well, why don't you just get rid of the boxes then? Because it seems like they're meaningless. If you have all of these variables, if all the variables matter, why do you have the boxes? Here's Judge Ketanji. Ketanji says that, well, if we don't have the boxes, if we don't get to check things, and we don't get to talk about race, isn't that discrimination against the people who want to talk about race?
Given a holistic review process like that, is there a risk of treating people differently by not allowing some applicants to talk about that aspect of their identity? I hear a process.
What if we want to talk about race?
There's a form that says, tell us about yourself, and people can put all sorts of things. I'm Catholic, I'm from, Los Angeles, I'm a Latina, whatever. But now we're entertaining a rule in which some people can say the things they want about who they are and have that valued in the system, but other people are not going to be able to, because they won't be able to reveal that they're Latino or African American or whatever. And I'm worried that creates an inequity in the system with respect to being able to express your identity and, importantly, have it valued by the university when it is considering the goal of bringing in different people. Is that a crazy worry, or is that something that I should be thinking about and concerned about?
So you always tell a Supreme Court judge, no, that's not crazy at all. Very, very brilliant, excellent question, Judge. But it is a good question because we have a concern about what the rule is, right? If you make race a part of this, you say, well, we can verify, we can sort of vet people, give them points, boost them, whatever, based on race. What happens if we don't? What is it? The opposite rule? Do we say that you're not allowed to give them any benefits and privileges based on race? Or how do we sort of solve this? Are you not allowed to mention it? Or can it not be considered at all? If that's the opposite of it being heavily considered. It's a good question. Let's see what he says.
Not at all, Your Honor, and not crazy at all. We
not crazy.
Are very concerned with that issue, Your Honor, that if race is the one thing, or if there are other factors that are subject to heightened scrutiny, if only those factors cannot be considered in the admissions process, then anyone with a background or perspective that doesn't fit into one of these categories will have an advantage in our admissions process. We think, just as Mr. Strawbridge said, that it's a mathematical exercise, and if you artificially say that only certain people can't tell the university about some of their important aspect of their background, but underrepresented minorities are barred from doing so, or all people can't discuss their racial background, then certain applicants will be subject to a disadvantage.
Thank you. Thank you, counsel.
Complicated question. The Supreme Court, of course, will issue their ruling. You can see the makeup of the court here. It is a 6-3 court. We've got 3 lefty judges. You see them here: Sotomayor, Kagan, and Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. They make up the 3 on the far right. The other judges are conservative, and we'll see if the conservative judges squeeze this one out. I am inclined to think that they will. We talked about this on the morning walk and talk for members this morning, but Judge John Roberts is somebody who has a problem with this. He said that, it's pretty disgusting what we do, dividing people up by race. And I'm very curious to see why Clarence Thomas is going to be the world's biggest racist after he votes to end affirmative action. But we'll see. And hopefully you join us as we wait for those rulings to come out. They should hit in the spring of next year. And of course, we will continue to cover it. Thank you for liking and subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, that was it for the segments on the day. You can see we covered a lot of ground. We talked all about Pelosi's Depape. We had big tech collusion from CISA and the disgusting censorship that the FBI and the DOJ and CISA, DHS have conducted on America. And we left off with some affirmative action stuff from the Supreme Court. But now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. I saw some super chats come in over from our friends on YouTube. And so we'll hit those up before we wrap up and head on over to the locals after party. We like to spend a little time going through some locals comments at the after party after the show is over, but not until we attend to the super chats that came in. And thank you, my friends, for your generosity today. We see the first one came in from Nomad. And this one came in from Ronnie. Said, you vacation more than Hunter Biden. I know, I just got back. I love you guys. I missed you big time. Nomad is here. Says cloth gloves equals possible computer hardware work. Oh, I see what you're saying. Like one of those static removers. And you sort of connect it to some metal so you don't electrify your hardware, fry out your motherboard. Maybe. Alex Bogey says, isn't Depape a Canadian citizen? Shouldn't he be deported to Canada? Can an American DA press charges against a foreign citizen? Yeah, definitely they can charge him. If Canada wants to exercise a claim for him or something, maybe they could do that, but I doubt that they would do anything like that. But yeah, my understanding he's actually an illegal immigrant. He overstayed his visa. Bill Malugin reported that on Twitter. Alex Bogey, I think you're right about that. Henry Back to Play says, did anyone read him his rights? The right to remain silent? It seems scripted. Where is his defense lawyer's press conference? Yeah, I have a big question about that. Is he going to lawyer up? Is he willing to talk? Does he want a defense? Does he want to take the stand? Is he going to be evaluated for competency so that we can see if he can actually be criminally prosecuted? Don't know. But it's a good question. And we'll see if he lawyers up or what happens, or if he gets a public defender. We'll very likely cover this case. We have 1R5 is on Rumble and brought in a Rumble rant. Says, can prosecutors just decree Mr. Depape insane and quietly put him away? No, I doubt they want testimony from him or his circle of friends and neighbors. Yeah, that's a a question that I have is, what if he starts talking? I mean, even if it's not true, what if he says, oh no, yeah, we have a relationship. Totally. I mean, even if it's not true, like at all, he just says it, right? He's a crazy person. No, I was over there and we were doing drugs and drinking and we were doing whatever. And you go, oh crap. And he says, I want a trial and I want to start talking about it. So they can't just make him be declared incompetent. The way that this stuff works is generally you've got a process where an individual is assessed by psychiatrists, by court professionals who say this person understands what's going on and they are competent, cognizant, they can stand trial. And the way that works, here in Arizona is you see two people. The defendant sees two people. I've worked with several people through this process. But if the court-appointed psychiatrist, if they agree that the person is competent or incompetent, you only see two. First one says competent, the next one says competent, you're done. If the first one says competent and then incompetent, you got to go get a tiebreaker with a third party, and we'll see what happens. But remember, I mean, even, Jacob Chansley was considered to be competent, and, I'm not sure, I don't want to speculate anymore on that, I guess, but they said he was competent. Nomad is here. Says redacted CSIS name equals Suzanne Spalding from Nomad. That name doesn't ring a bell for me there, Nomad, but I appreciate the super chat in here. Carl Borcher says Paul Pelosi is what Hunter will be in his 80s. Yeah, there's a lot of memes going around. Hunter is in his underwear, with like a hammer in his hand. It's not a pretty sight. It's not family friendly for the program here. But thank you, Carl, for that one. Warrior 8 says, why is there no case number on the paperwork for Depape? There is, actually. It's up here. So here. Oh, you're right. And not on this one. That's a good question. I don't remember where I sourced this one from. I don't remember where I got that one. Crap, I can't remember where I got it. I don't know, but that's a good question. So I'm going to go follow the case. The case number should be here. And then if it's stamped off, this is probably a document that came. Oh, I think it came from the DOJ. That's where it came from. Yeah, that's why. It came from the Department of Justice. So they released the original copy. That's why. They published it on their website. That's where I got it. So once it gets filed, we'll see case numbers up here. That's why, obviously. Okay. I was like, where did I get this? I was like, where the hell did I get this? Oh yeah, okay. It came from the DOJ, the press release. So it's the original copy before it got filed. Good question on that one. That was from Warrior B Yacht with a great question. Hell Pike is here. Says, look how quickly the defense industry took control of the information control apparatus. This hardly even looks like America anymore. I couldn't agree more, Hell Pike. What the heck are we talking about here, Hell Pike? What are we talking about? Misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. Like in America, it happened fast, boy. 2 years, essentially, right? The pandemic accelerated all of this. And we've got morons out there on social media, all over the country, in fact, who are clapping like dumb seals as their speech gets stripped away from them. It's really pathetic. And it's hard to even recognize this country anymore. Thank you for that, Hell's Pike. Generous dono on that one. But I think that is it, my friends. I think we're going to wrap it up right there on the day. And we are going over to locals for the after party. We're going to spend another maybe 20 minutes or so over on the after party. And so if you want to come and join us, that's over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to wrap up the show here and head on over there right now. We're not even going to stop. But before we do, I want to thank you for all of your referrals to our law firm. I know we have a lot of fun on this show, but I am very grateful for you keeping your antennas up. If you ever hear of anybody who is charged with a crime in Arizona, whether it's something minor or something major, we can help. We've handled everything from traffic offenses, drug offenses, domestic stuff, major felonies, some of the worst types of offenses you can think of. We've worked on them. I've worked on them. We have an awesome team of people. We combine our powers to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that in their lives. And I appreciate your referrals. You can schedule online, rrlawaz.com, 480-787-0394 is the phone number to call. And we'd love to talk to anybody who needs help. Grab a copy of my book. If we can't help you, we'll send you to somebody who can. If it's not a good fit, no problem. We just want you to succeed and do well, because the system here can be very difficult for a lot of people. But thank you for your referrals. Very much appreciate them. Thank you to the mods who, as always, mod down the fort for us. Big shout outs to Vientikiss, who I think is on game night tonight. K-Bean, thank you to K-Bean, Just Cause, Lean, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu was in the house, and we have some other people who swing by from time to time. This is our last day of our Spotlight supporter level, so do not sign up for that. And Chris Romero, David B3, Dr. EMB, and John over at Q Simple, by the way. John over at qsimple.com. Awesome dude. I met him when I was in Austin, Texas. Very cool guy. I think we're going to hang out and maybe do some business or do some work together. But John over at qsimple.com, thank you for your support. Dr. EMB, thank you for your support. David B3, Chris Romero, you guys have been Spotlight supporters for a long time. I'm very grateful for your support. But we are going to wrap this up, and we'll probably have some other interesting things to add in its place, but though that has not been finalized quite yet. So in November, we'll be making that change. But thank you to everybody who has contributed to the show. You really do keep things going for us, and we're grateful for it. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Thank you to everybody in the YouTube chat. I see Holy F My S Stinks. Strong is in the house. New Yorker FJB's over there. John Smith. Nunya Beeswax is in the house, along with Clarity Consciousness. Reefer Man 69's over there. Shout out to Vijaya, also in the house. Spidey Fan, Lenny Malley, Curtis Bartle, Zulu, Ronnie Cole. Over on Rumble, thank you to my friends. Let's see who's over here. We've got Hiker7, H2O, Jackalaya, Dog Diggers in the house, Soul Wound, Member of the Public, Hiker7, One the Narrow Way, Cat Crap Fever, along with T. Jones, all in the house. But that, my friends, is it for us. We're going to jump on over to locals. Locals, I'll see you in 30 seconds. But that's it for us, my friends. I look forward to, no, what are we doing? Gosh, it's been a while. I got to figure it out. Oh, that's right. We are going to be back tomorrow to do it all again, and I hope to see you right here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. See you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.